You could smell the sugar and sweat in the gymnasium air. Cotton candy, sneaker rubber, and pure teenage adrenaline. Friday night, Johnson High's annual talent show, aka Got Guts or Go Home. Lights strobe. iPhones lifted like torches. The judges' table was a trio of iron hearts. Coach Danvers, ex-Marine turned PE teacher. Ms. Keller, drama queen with Broadway dreams and a resting smirk. And Darnell D2 Jenkins, a senior with a YouTube channel and an ego big enough to need a second seat. The crowd was peaking. Someone just finished juggling flaming batons to a Travis Scott remix. C. Tyson, class clown and future Instagram influencer, took center stage, mic buzzing. Well, well, well. If no one else dares to follow that fire, I guess we're done for the night, the audience whooped. Students stood, grabbing their bags. The camera panned left and right for any last-minute surprises. Nothing, until a voice rasped from stage left. Wait. Just one word. Quiet. Gravelly. Like someone unearthing a box buried 50 years deep. A single spotlight turned toward the edge of the bleachers. It was him, Mr. Henry, the school's overnight security guard, 70, maybe older. Always in that same navy windbreaker, faded jeans, and a cap that once said Jazz Fest 81, but had been rubbed blank by time. He stood slow, like his knees had to negotiate with his past before letting him rise. In his hand, a Walkman. Real as analog, with headphones dangling from one side like a forgotten IV. I'd like to offer a song, he said. The gym froze. Then came the first ripple of laughter, nervous, unsure. Ah, hell, let him, someone in the back yelled. This gonna be good. MC Tyson squinted, unsure if this was a prank. Mr. Henry, sir? Are you serious? I mean, you want to sing now? Henry nodded, walking toward the stage, one slow step at a time. The judges exchanged glances. Coach Danvers shook his head, muttering, he's gonna fall over before the first verse. Ms. Keller, whispering, what's next, cafeteria lady doing burlesque? Darnell just laughed. Y'all better not let this go viral. Henry climbed the stairs, unhurried, unbothered. The crowd parted like mist before a train. Can someone plug this in? He asked softly, holding up a tape. One tech kid, sensing something odd in the air, took it without a word and slipped it into the old O-tap converter, usually reserved for retro skits. The gym dimmed. The first notes came crackling through the PA system. A soft horn, a low piano, a rhythm brushing like silk across glass. At last, by Etta James. Someone gasped. A teacher covered her mouth. Henry stepped to the center, no mic. He didn't need one. He closed his eyes. Then, he sang. Not like a man who wanted applause, but like a man who remembered a promise he made to himself when the world stopped listening. His voice, smoky, worn, drenched in something old and holy, poured over the gym. The laughter vanished. Phones stopped recording. It felt like church, a jazz club, a memory. The gym, for the first time all night, went absolutely still. Not one student dared interrupt, and somewhere in the back, a girl whispered to her friend, this ain't no talent show anymore. Long before he was the man with the mop and keys. Henry L. Watson was the man in the spotlight, beneath velvet curtains and sweat-soaked ceilings of jazz clubs that never wrote down history, but lived it nightly. Back in 1967, they called him Velvet Smoke, not because of his skin, though it was deep as mahogany and smooth as polished basswood, but because of that voice, molasses warm, just enough rasp to tell the truth. He didn't sing. He confessed, caressed, broke you down, and lifted you in the same bar. Henry's real stage was the south side of Chicago, where music oozed from street corners, and every night was a war between pain and beauty. He played the Boyle, the Spider Lounge, the Indigo Door, places long gone, places where white record execs sat in the dark, scouting for a sound that hurt a little. And Henry? Henry hurt perfectly. He had one shot. A track recorded on reel-to-reel in a smoky basement club. Soft Mercy, a song he wrote for his mother who died with her radio still on. That track, a week later, played on midnight rotation. DJs whispered his name like it was illegal. Then came the contract. Then came the lie. The label wanted the song, not the singer. They offered a re-recording with a studio-ready face. That meant white. They told Henry he could write for them, maybe. Maybe do background vocals. Maybe stay in the back. He said no. Next week, Soft Mercy was on every jukebox in Harlem, except the name read Bobby Lowell. A blonde kid from Cincinnati who couldn't hit half the notes. Henry walked into the studio, tape in hand, contract unwritten. "You stole my voice," he told them. "You didn't protect it," they said back. The door shut. Not just the studio. Deur, all of them. No gigs, no bookings. Clubs stopped calling, word spread fast. Henry was difficult, proud, hard to market. So, he walked away. He boxed up the vinyls, tossed the suits, kept only the Walkman and that one cassette. His real voice. The only thing the world never edited. He drifted. Factory work, kitchen shifts, luggage handler. For a decade, he worked. Nights, slept days, talked to no one. His friends said he'd gone silent. But the silence wasn't peace. It was exile. In 1985, he landed a job in a nowhere town with a decent cafeteria and a school that didn't care who cleaned up as long as the floors didn't squeak. Johnson High. He didn't tell anyone what he was. They just knew him as Old Man Henry, the guy who swept the hallways humming under his breath, who nodded at the theater kids, who fixed the broken amp without anyone asking, who sometimes, if you listened close enough, sang in the stairwell after hours when the halls were empty and the stars outside blinked quiet. Some students tried to guess his past. Retired Navy? No, ex-con who found Jesus. Nah, he's just lonely. The truth was too big to be believed. The truth was the world heard him and chose not to remember. But Henry did. Every night before his shift, he'd rewind that one tape. The real one, the one he made with his soul, not their contracts. He'd sit in the janitor's closet, surrounded by bleach and broken projectors, and press play, and listen to himself sing. Every verse was a scar he still carried. Every note was a reminder. He didn't lose his voice. He buried it, where no one could steal it again. And in that silence over the years, something strange happened. He began to hear echoes, young voices, raw and fearless, bouncing through the school walls, a boy rapping in the locker room, a girl belting in the hallway when she thought no one was around, a choir trying harmonies on the lunch tables. They weren't polished, they weren't famous, but they were hungry. And Henry, though he never said it out loud, felt a thrum in his chest. A rhythm that had been waiting for a reason to return. Still, he stayed in the background, until the night Jaden asked him a question, the kind of question that would make him step back into the light. But that spark hadn't struck just yet. For now, Henry was still a shadow with a song, waiting. Started with a beat, not from a stage, not from a speaker, but from the back of a mop bucket where Jaden DeWitt, Jr., mostly invisible, quietly brilliant with words, tapped out a rhythm while waiting for detention to end. He'd caught rapping in the gym storage room. Language inappropriate for school, the vice principal said. Truth was, Jaden wasn't cursing. He was bleeding into verses about rent past due, a mother who worked nights and a father who turned ghost before he turned 10. Henry had found him sitting on the floor of the boys' locker room, headphones on, notebook full of crossed-out lines. "You in trouble?" Henry asked, sweeping around him. Jaden shrugged. "I'm always in trouble, just not the kind they write down." Henry didn't press. He kept sweeping. Jaden looked up. "You ever listen to hip-hop?" Henry stopped. He turned. "I listen to truth. Sometimes that's hip-hop. Sometimes it's silence." Jaden blinked, unsure if it was a joke or a test. "What's your name?" Henry asked. "Jaden, you write your own?" "Every word." Henry nodded. "Then say it like it matters." That was the first spark. A week later, Jaden found himself sneaking into the janitor's closet during lunch. Not for mischief, but for something he couldn't name yet. Inside, Henry had set up a rickety chair, an old tape deck, and 2 milk crates, one for his Walkman, the other stacked with notebooks from kids who'd tried to rhyme before the world. Told them they weren't built for rhythm. Henry called it the echo room. Jaden spit a verse. Henry listened. No compliments, no corrections, just this. You breathe like you're scared. Don't be. Jaden returned the next day. And the next, Henry showed him how to land a line on the beat like a boxer's jab. How to build tension in a bar like a preacher winding up a Sunday sermon. How to stop rhyming just to rhyme and start rhyming to reveal. One afternoon, Jaden paused mid-flow and asked, "You used to perform, didn't you?" Henry didn't answer right away. He stared at the cassette player. "I sang," he said finally. "A long time ago." Jaden nodded. He didn't push, but that night he went home and searched. Velvet Smoke. The name popped up in a Reddit thread. Lost Legends of Jazz. A comment mentioned a track called Soft Mercy that vanished from rotation in 1968. Jaden listened and froze. The voice was a memory he never lived. A sound wrapped in smoke and pain and peace. It made his throat tighten. It made his world tilt. He showed up the next morning, eyes wide. "That was you." Henry looked at him. "It is me. Still." Jaden's voice cracked. "Why didn't you fight back? You could have been..." Henry raised a hand. "I'm not here for could have been. I'm here for what still can be." That hit Jaden harder than any hook. From that day on, the janitor's closet became a classroom. No walls, no syllabus. Just music, breath, and truth. Jaden wrote a new verse about silence, about legacy, about a man the world forgot who never forgot himself. Henry helped him shape it, line by line, like threading a needle through a scar. He didn't say it, but he saw it. Jaden had it. And for the first time in decades, Henry felt the music inside him wake up. Not for himself, but for someone who might carry it forward. The night before the talent show, Jaden paced back and forth outside the gym. "I can't do it," he said. "They want TikTok dances and auto-tune, not this." Henry didn't scold him. He simply walked to the wall, placed one hand against it, and whispered, "The world don't need more noise. It needs more truth." Jaden looked up, scared, inspired, trembling. He nodded, almost convinced. But as the show began, and the lights flared, and the beatboxers and fire dancers took over the stage, Jaden's courage buckled. He backed out. Henry didn't try to stop him. He just looked down at his old Walkman, his trembling fingers hovering over the tape, and thought, maybe it's time, not to teach, but to remember out loud. The moment was coming, and when it did, he would not sing to impress, he would sing to remind. Backstage, the curtain buzzed with leftover energy from the last act. A junior with LED gloves spinning in the dark to EDM thunder. The gym roared. MC Tyson leaned into the mic with the cocky grin of someone already planning the after-party. "Well, unless we got Beyoncé's cousin hiding in the crowd, I'd say that's our show, folks." The crowd began to stir, half standing. Then the voice came. "I'd like to sing." It wasn't loud. It didn't have to be. It slid under the chatter, under the bleachers, like a wind that made people pause. Tyson looked around, confused. "Say what?" A shuffle from stage left, Mr. Henry still in his security jacket. No costume, no stage name, just him. The gym rustled. Giggles popped like soda cans. One student blurted, "Yo, he's serious." Coach Danvers leaned into Ms. Keller. "He's gonna embarrass himself. This is brutal." Darnell pulled out his phone. "I'm recording this. If he starts yodeling, I'm posting it in real time." Jaden, from behind the bleachers, froze. His breath caught in his throat. He hadn't known this was going to happen. Hadn't even seen Henry sign up. Henry reached center stage like a man crossing a bridge he'd burned long ago. He looked out, not at the students, not at the judges, but toward the rafters, toward something that lived only in memory. Tyson stepped in. Sir, you want to sing something? You, need a mic?" Henry shook his head. "Just play the tape." The tech kid from the AV club, the same one who'd helped him weeks ago, hesitated. Then, like he knew this was more than a gimmick, he walked over and slid the cassette in. Click, crackling static, then piano. A warm, slow, bleeding note. The opening bars of At Last, not the original Etta James version, his version. A subtle difference, softer, more space between the chords, like the song had been aging in oak barrels. Henry closed his eyes, then he sang. One line. That's all it took. One line and the air shifted. It wasn't a performance. It was a release. His voice filled the gym like candlelight in a church with no roof. It was cracked, yes, weathered. But inside those cracks lived oceans. You could hear heartbreak that was never avenged, love that had no audience, defiance that had waited decades to be spoken. The crowd stopped breathing, phones kept filming, but no one moved. One girl lowered her phone mid-record, eyes wide. This ain't no joke. On the judges' table, Ms. Keller had her hand over her mouth. Coach Danvers blinked like he saw a ghost, and Darnell, king of cool, slowly lowered his phone and whispered, "I think I just got chills." Jaden stood in the shadows, heart in his throat. This wasn't Henry reclaiming glory. This was Henry showing them what they'd never seen, what the world once tried to erase, what time had tried to bury. A voice that once brought standing ovations now held a high school gym hostage, not with volume, but with truth. As the final note rang out, Henry opened his eyes. Silence. Then one clap, then two. Then the gym exploded. Not wild screaming, respect. The kind of standing ovation that didn't say, "You surprised us." It said, "We're sorry we didn't see you before." Jaden didn't move. He just let the tears come. Because in that moment he knew what he had heard. Wasn't just a song. It was a man returning to himself, in front of everyone. They didn't sit down. Even after the last note faded like dust into the rafters, the entire gym remained standing. No screams, just applause, slow, rising, deliberate, like a wave of memory catching up with the present. Henry didn't bow. He simply stepped back, lowered his eyes and turned away. That's when the first voice cracked the air, not from the audience but from the judges' table, Ms. Keller, whispering. But her mic was still live. Oh my God. Velvet smoke. Coach Danvers furrowed his brow. What? I had his tape, she said louder now, voice shaking. My mom played it every Sunday. I thought he died in '72. Henry stopped at the edge of the stage, didn't turn around. Ms. Keller stood up. Her voice rose, carrying the disbelief of 3 generations. You're him, aren't you? A murmur swept the gym like wind over wheat. The name rippled. Velvet smoke. Phones were now on overdrive. Google searches lit up the network, a forgotten voice, a buried legend. Real, here, right now. And then it happened. Live, raw, and unplanned. Darnell, too, cool to be moved by anything but his own playlist, stood up and walked to center stage. Handed Henry the mic, sir, he said, quieter than anyone had ever heard him. You just did what no one's done all night. Henry looked at him. You stopped time. The crowd erupted, not into cheers, into chaos. Live streams exploded. Velvet. Smoke is real. Bro, this man just dropped soul on our heads like a thunderstorm. This ain't a school show, it's a resurrection. From the back, someone yelled, "Sing another!" But Henry didn't take the mic. He looked into the crowd, eyes scanning past the phones, past the bright faces, and landed on one. Jaden. Tears. On his cheek, standing like a kid watching his future speak from his past. Henry nodded. Jaden understood. He walked forward, tentatively, then faster, until he reached the stage steps. The gym held its breath. Henry offered him the mic. Jaden's hand trembled as he took it. He glanced at the crowd, an ocean of expectation, judgment, wonder. I was gonna do something else tonight, he said, voice shaking. But I backed out. I didn't think my story mattered. He looked at Henry. But then I realized the truth doesn't care if it's popular. It just wants to be said. Silence. Jaden pulled out a folded paper from his back pocket. "No beat," he said. "Just breath," and then he began. His verse wasn't loud, it wasn't perfect, but it came from the marrow. He rapped about silence, about growing up watching his mom cry behind a cracked door, about walking through metal detectors to classrooms that never saw him, about dreaming in full color while the world stayed black and white. Each line hit like a fist to the chest. When he finished, there was no applause. Not yet. Just one loud exhale from the entire gym, then a roar, but this time not for novelty, for truth. Henry stood beside him, unmoving, but his eyes shone. A girl near the front jumped up and shouted into her live stream, "This is history, I'm not even exaggerating." Coach Danvers wiped his eyes with his sleeve and pretended it was dust. Ms. Keller sat stunned. Darnell turned to his camera, his voice cracking for the first time all year. "Forget talent show. This is what it means to have soul." Then came the moment no one saw coming, a hush. Jaden stepped back, nodded at Henry, and handed him the paper. Henry looked at it, folded it, put it in his pocket, then leaned into the mic and said, "Every song I ever sang, every club I ever played, every dude I ever gave away was for this." He didn't sing again that night. He didn't need to, because the stage wasn't his anymore. It belonged to the ones who still had time. To sing before the world forgets them too. He raised Jaden's hand like a champion in a ring. The crowd lost. Not for victory, but for justice raw, unpolished, finally heard. By Monday, the talent show wasn't just a school event. It was a digital eruption. Clips of Henry's performance and Jaden's verse trended across TikTok, Instagram, even Twitter. Not in viral meme fashion, but like a hymn people didn't know they needed. Something about it, unfiltered, undeniable, made people stop scrolling. Listen, cry. The tag, Velvet Smoke Lives, surged past 1.4 million views in 48 hours. Old music heads dug out dusty vinyls, realizing the mysterious crooner on their forgotten jazz records had never been just a rumor. A Reddit thread called The Return of Velvet Smoke mapped out his lost discography with forensic obsession. Fans began to tag the original record label in public posts, demanding they acknowledge who wrote Soft Mercy. Then came the letters from strangers, from fans, from former musicians who'd lost their names to time and contracts, from a woman in Memphis who wrote, "My mother used to sing your songs to me. When I heard your voice again, it felt like she came back just to say goodbye." From a jazz professor in Harlem, "Your phrasing changed the way I teach. You were the blueprint, even when they erased the name." From an old backup singer, Dolores Ray, who once shared a mic with him in '69, "I remember when they told you to sing from behind the curtain. You never bowed then. You didn't bow now." Henry read every letter in the quiet room behind the gym where no one interrupted him. Jaden once found him sitting on the steps, eyes glossy, envelope still open in hand. "Do you regret not fighting? Back harder?" Jaden asked. Henry didn't answer immediately. He held up one of the letters. "Back then, I thought silence was all I had left," he said. "But turns out, silence collects interest. The world's finally ready to listen." Jaden nodded slowly, the weight of that truth sinking in. And the school, it changed too. The intercom, once reserved for announcements and bad news, now played one Velvet Smoke track each morning. Not because of nostalgia, but because the students requested it. A week later, the principal announced a new elective, Story and Sound, the power of personal voice. Guess who got asked to guest teach? Henry refused the title instructor. He simply said, "I'll just be there to listen." One day after a small class open mic, a student whispered, "Mr. Henry, do you think my voice matters?" Henry smiled, not with his mouth but with his whole body. "You don't need me to think it matters," he said. "You just need to sing like it already does." That moment, quiet, fleeting, became one more echo in a gym now haunted by something holy. Not ghosts of failure, but of legacy finally answered. The music room used to sit silent after school. Dusty instruments, out-of-tune piano, posters curling at the edges. Now it pulsed. Every Thursday, just after final bell, it transformed. No auditions, no stage lights, no judges, just a circle of chairs, a mic. And Henry, the unofficial name was the listening hour. No flyers, no rules, but word spread fast. They came. Not just the kids who already sang, but the quiet ones. The ones who wrote verses in science notebooks. The ones who whispered lyrics into their pillow. The ones who thought their stories were too ugly, too strange, too small to be shared. And when they sang, no matter how off-key, how nervous, Henry sat with both hands folded over his Walkman, eyes steady, nodding at every trembling word like it was gospel. Before each song, he asked them one question. What truth are you carrying? It wasn't about performance, it was about release. One girl, Emily, shy, never raised her hand in class, stood up and sang a song about her dad in rehab. Her voice cracked halfway through. No one laughed. Henry didn't interrupt. He waited until she finished, then whispered, "You just said something no textbook ever will." A boy who stuttered rapped a full verse without a pause. When he finished, Henry said, "That's what happens when your truth outruns your fear." Jaden came every week, not to perform but to listen, to witness. He became something else entirely, a bridge between generations. He even brought his little brother once, who stood up and sang "Twinkle, Twinkle" with both eyes shut tight. Henry gave him a standing ovation. One afternoon, a student who'd never spoken in class shared a poem. Short, sharp, just 6 lines. It ended with, "They said I was too dark to be light, but my skin has always known fire." The room froze. Henry stood, walked over, and placed the student's hand on the mic again. "Say it again," he said. The student repeated the line, louder, stronger, and the room shook, not with applause, but with recognition. These weren't recitals, they were reckonings. Each voice added something new to that room, like threads in a tapestry of unspoken stories. And week by week, something beautiful happened. The students stopped mimicking. They stopped chasing trends. They started sounding like themselves. And Henry, he never sang again, not in public, not on record, but through every trembling note, every word that cracked open the ceiling, his voice lived on, not as a memory, but as a gift. Spring came late that year. The sky above Johnson High was still gray, but inside the courtyard, warmth had already arrived, in the form of wood, sweat, and small, stubborn hands building something from scratch. Jaden led the project, not because he had to, but because he owed it. It started with an idea, a stage, small, open air, just a platform and a mic, where anyone could speak their truth, no judges, no followers, no pressure. The school board approved it under one condition. It couldn't be named after a performance. Jaden smiled. It won't be. They called it Henry's Corner. At the ribbon cutting, the entire student body gathered. Teachers, parents, even 2 alumni who'd driven 4 hours just to see it. At the center stood Henry, hat in hand, coat buttoned despite the sun. Jaden handed him the mic, but Henry didn't speak. Instead, he stepped up to the stage, gently placed his old Walkman at the base of the mic stand, and sat down in the front row. He nodded once. Jaden understood. He stepped up and began to sing. Not jazz, not rap, just a song, a simple melody. He wrote with Henry in mind, about listening, about legacy, about how some voices don't fade. They just echo in other people's mouths. The crowd swayed, not dancing, feeling. And when it ended, there was no applause, just a stillness. Then Henry did something no one expected. He stood, walked slowly to the stage, picked up the mic and sang the final line of the song. One note, low, soft, final. Then he turned to Jaden and whispered, "Now it's yours." He walked away before anyone could film him, not out of pride, but peace. Jaden watched him go, his heart full and hollow all at once. Then he looked down at the Walkman still resting on the wood, pressed play. and let the old voice play once more. Just loud enough for those close to hear. Henry never looked back, but just before turning the corner, he raised one hand. Not a wave, a passing of the torch. And in that moment, Johnson High didn't just remember him, they became him. If this story moved you, share it. Somewhere out there, someone's still waiting to be heard.